Welcome to Gift. It's nice to see you. Before we start up on your presentation, you want to introduce yourself, say if there's any times you've come to Gift before, and what are some hobbies you like.
Yeah, I'm Jihyun. I'm a student in Michigan and I'm speaking for the Green Technology Institute. As for my hobbies, I like to read and I'm also very interested in the environment.
All right. You want to start your presentation?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
If there's any videos in your presentation, just make sure to share with sound.
Yeah, can you see the screen?
I can see the screen, yes. It's
Amazing.
bias and AI data representations. Is that the correct slide?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so I'll get started. So, hello, I'm speaking for the Green Technology Institute. We're a group of students internationally and within the United States working to understand artificial intelligence, both in terms of the community and the environment. And we wanted to talk a bit about the bias in artificial intelligence data representation and how this is affecting our youth today, and some of the ways that we're working to reduce the harmful impacts. So, I think the main question that a lot of people are raising today and in literature in general is artificial intelligence inherently biased? And the theoretical answer is that no, it does not have to be biased. But in practice, nearly all artificial intelligence models that are developed and trained today is exhibiting a form of bias. And this is because artificial intelligence is used trained based on the data that we currently have, and the choices that we make for the algorithm and the design also play into the human prejudices that designers have. And so, some of the ways that we understand artificial intelligence bias is through data biases. This is in the training data, and so if you're using unbalanced and information containing historical prejudices, you will see artificial intelligence that recreate these biases. You also have algorithmic and design biases, and I think this is a bit more complex, but it's essentially when the algorithm is made to factor different weights. And so, if you're looking at, for example, if the government is using a form of artificial intelligence to figure out what groups of individuals, what communities need the most funding, the factors that they use to understand this might have a inherent bias because this is a choices that the designers are making. You also have human and cognitive biases, which is in the developing and also in the labeling and evaluating processes of artificial intelligence, in which the developers, annotators, and users are unconsciously introducing their own biases. And also with generative AI in general, you will see that in large language models and in image production, they will be using a lot of internet text and content, and this will create societal stereotypes regarding gender, race, profession, culture, etc. So, just to go a bit more into the technical forms of biases in general, today we're talking about the first one, the statistical and data biases that I kind of talked about just now. And we also have different types of biases that our institute looks at, like social biases and normative biases. And just to go kind of briefly into them, social biases is when the artificial intelligence is amplifying social hierarchies and stereotypes arising both from the data and algorithmic processes. And so a good example of this is that commercial classification that uses artificial intelligence right now performed best on lighter skinned men and worst on darker skinned women. And this is just one example of the different kind of misclassification that can happen with artificial intelligence biases. You also have normative biases, which is the tendency of models to kind of make assumptions about values and social ideals about the best and most just decisions. And so, for example, if hiring platforms are using artificial intelligence, they might make decisions of fairness by looking at the prediction parity instead of, for example, looking at the anti discrimination law. And to go a bit more into the statistical biases, I want to give you two main examples of how this is impacting our lives. So, first of all, you'll have sampling biases, and this is what the example I talked about also applies to this one, where you'll see that a lot of the facial recognition systems that big companies like Microsoft and Amazon are using are performing better on light skinned men. You also have aggregation biases, which is the fact that the artificial intelligence is made for the general user, but the quote unquote general user in reality differs for many different people. And so speech recognition systems perform better on just regular quote unquote non-accented English compared to ones that contain dialects like Scottish accents, and also for African American vernacular English. And another thing that we look at the Green Technology Institute is the fact that professional language often omits AAVE, and so this is another form of the many biases that we are trying to understand. So, what does this mean for our youth? I think it's very important to focus on our youth in particular, is because we are the generation that is using AI in a mass degree for the first time, and artificial intelligence is affecting youth not only in certain aspects of their lives, but also in their school and their work, and foreseeably in their jobs in the future as well. And because it will impact so much of the economic systems in the future as well, it's important that we understand the limitations that artificial intelligence has. And another thing that we try to look at, apart from the biases as well, is that artificial intelligence may itself weaken critical thinking. And so as students, without guidances, look for artificial intelligence not just as a tool, but as almost a replacement for thinking. This is another way that unequal outcomes may be reproduced because of artificial intelligence. So, we try to understand artificial intelligence and the disproportionate impacts it has on society, not just on the algorithm, but also on how it's applied to different communities and how much understanding of the limitations our students have today. Oh, so some of the work that our team is doing right now is helping to understand local communities and youth about the artificial intelligence impact on equity, in particular jobs and the environment. And we do this through student-led research and education to understand how schools, libraries, youth organizations, and workplaces should be using artificial intelligence. And we focus mainly on three things. We look at artificial intelligence and the environmental footprint and compute efficiency. We also look at case studies of AI biases and unequal outcomes in the application of artificial intelligence in education and employment. We also look at equity modeling for students to assess the disproportionate effects and power loss that can be caused from AI. And another fascinating research that we're doing that a student from Pakistan is leading is we're trying to understand how much disproportionate harm it can be caused when students, and not only students, but people across different communities use artificial intelligence as a form of diagnosis. So if they have a medical issue, they won't go to a doctor. They would instead use ChatGPT to ask like, hey, what disease may this be? And because of the inaccuracy, we try to understand the safeguards and the protections that are necessary, and also the policies and recommendations, and also the assessments that is important for local decision makers to adopt as artificial intelligence is growing. So, how do we build a sustainable future with AI? We mainly focus on two different ways of doing this. The first is literacy. We want students to understand not whether AI should be used in their day-to-day lives, because it is already being used, but how it should be used. And so a sustainable path for understanding artificial intelligence would be to teach students to question the outputs that artificial intelligence is giving them about whether it is credible, whether it has the correct sources, to recognize biases, and also fundamentally use AIs as a tool for thinking rather than a substitute for it. And we also want students to understand the cumulative impacts that artificial intelligence is having in our society, especially with the environmental impact as well. And the second one is we want students to understand that corporations and different groups that allow artificial intelligence to expand in non-sustainable ways should take accountability for what they're doing. So we believe that it's important that we have better data practices, better audits, and overall better human insight on big decision making like healthcare, finances, and education. And as AI continues to scale, we want to be aware that it may amplify existing inequalities in so many different ways. And a sustainable way for us to slow this down is to understand what decision making agencies and powers should take accountability for the different limitations that artificial intelligence has. So, yeah, I think that was all from the Green Technology Institute. You can find more about us in our website at thegreentechnologyinstitute.org. And yeah, I would open the floor for any questions.
Right. That was a really good slideshow. I thought it was really interesting seeing how the biases of AI can really affect a lot of things. My first question is, do you think children or youth that heavily are dependent on generative LLMs will grow up with embedded stereotypes because of the AI biases?
I think it goes in several different ways. And I think an important aspect to understanding biases is that it's not necessarily that they're creating a biased content that the people are consuming through large language models, because language models is just one form of artificial intelligence. I think there's so many different artificial intelligence like facial recognition that we're using for security. You also have like data analytics that you'll use in finances. And I think more so than students kind of growing up full of biased thoughts because of AIs, it's that artificial intelligence being applied in various forms in various agencies are causing biases that are impacting them.
All right. Um, let me just check the YouTube to see if anybody is um has any
Yeah,
question.
I just I want to add one comment, and I realized that you are talking about the AI bias, and the PPT is using the trees and the wonderful nature things. So I think that makes us have a very good feeling that the technology and our nature and our life actually they are one thing. They are not separate. So that's really great. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a really good presentation. If you should come back to Gift in I think 6 months time. It was like it's learning about this AI biases. I really liked how you went in depth to the topic. You didn't just like say, okay, yeah, AI is biased, but you gave like really good reasons and you went into weighing, which that really shows like you did your research on this. I have one last kind of fun question. Did you use AI in any part of this slideshow?
Yeah, I think artificial intelligence has a lot of benefits for students in that it can help students to have better content using large language models. And I think it's important to understand the distinguishing between like is large language models dangerous for students as opposed to like the large other types of artificial intelligence that our agencies are using is dangerous. So that's kind of the main distinguishing that like our team tries to do, because I think saying that artificial intelligence as it is used for like different types of day-to-day work is that dangerous is kind of very difficult to understand in the present situation because almost everyone is currently using it. So we try to understand this at a larger scale where it's not necessarily if you're using artificial intelligence, you're doing something wrong, but more so that like if we're using it in a larger scale that is not in a controlled, sustainable way like we looked at today, that is a bigger issue.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If I think our next participant or presenter is not here yet, I'm judging by the fact that there's no attendee of that name. That kind of confirms my thoughts. So if you want to take an extra 5, 7 minutes, if there's anybody else that has any questions, do you want to answer them or do you
Yeah,
have?
actually, I have a lot of questions I have to say because why I'm so interested in this topic is that it's because my major before I used to be in the data modeling and the data analysis. I used to do this kind of work. So I see your presentation. I feel that is the AI bias quite related to the data cleaning, right? That is quite close to the data cleaning, right?
Oh, sorry, were you talking to me?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Could you specify what you mean by data cleaning?
Yeah, so I think that might be quite close to the data cleaning because that might actually one of the main problem recently is not we do not have enough data, but we have too much extra data, and like the biased data or some other maybe fake data, and so the data cleaning would be the one topic for the artificial intelligence. So I wonder if you what you are talking about would be quite related to the data cleaning.
Yeah, I think so. I think that kind of goes into the idea of one of the forms of artificial intelligence bias, which is like the data bias, which is like the inherent biases that the data has. But I also think there's limitations to just understanding that based on data cleaning, because there's also other forms of biases that we looked at that's like being caused by the developers, by the decision making as we create the algorithms, etc. So I think it's definitely related to that, but we also want to understand it more in a comprehensive way as well.
Well, thank you. And I want to share a little bit about my understanding of that. And I also would like to hear your feedback to this. I think that for the data or the algorithms, they are always to describe our daily work, daily life, so that our real world are actually described in these data forms. And the artificial intelligence sometimes is they also follow the rules of this world. So they use a way to describe our world, how our world works in the data way and in the model way or in the platform way. So that is my understanding for that. So I would like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it does recreate biases that we see in our own world. And it's not necessarily bad if we're just looking at large language models, right? But we're also seeing artificial intelligence, like I mentioned, we're using it in like facial recognition by police departments. We're using it as increasingly as we make military decisions, increasingly as we make financial decisions, governmental policy decisions about supporting people in different areas. And I think in those senses, artificial intelligence can't be justified by saying that it's recreating what we see around us because we're applying it in a way that seems to suggest it's completely just, but it is not. So I think it's more so not that the artificial intelligence itself is evil, but our application and our understanding of it has to be very nuanced.
Yeah, so that will goes to the philosophy part. So artificial intelligence will finally also have the philosophy issues because that is also our humans issue, right? Yeah, thank you.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
see,
so
do you have, yeah, see, what do you think?
Uh, well, uh,
Yeah,
could you
or do
repeat?
you have more questions?
Um, well, I was, sorry, give me a moment. My brain is not braining. Um, sorry, I was for the extra 10 minutes. I was just communicating with nearby if we wanted to do a brief panel discussion if our next presenter wasn't here. So if I don't have any extra questions, if maybe if you want to join us for the slide panel discussion, that'd be great. But yeah.
Yeah. So, and I have another question to follow this. That is, I believe that there would be so many people also, so many teenagers also quite interested in the AI data bias and all these issues. Then, if so, how can they join you or join your organization so that they can work together and get to know more and discuss more in future? Is there any way for them to join you?
Yeah, so our website has a join us part where you can join as a educator, as a researcher, and as part of our team. I think mainly what we try to do is we communicate at the local level to find recommendations that we would present to schools and to different organizations that we work with. And so recently, what we were able to do is we presented to one of our school districts saying that you should open up a artificial intelligence model that uses less water and less energy than other ones because it is made to have less environmental impact. And so, in those senses, we're trying to make recommendations that directly match our students' lives. And yeah, our group is all for supporting everyone in their journey towards combating artificial intelligence being misused and misapplied.
Yeah. And since I know that you are based in United States and I'm in China, so are you only able to support the schools in United States, or you would like also can support schools outside United States, such like support schools in China?
Yeah, we have international students. We have students in Pakistan and also in South Korea. So we'll definitely be able to support students from anywhere.
Oh, that's perfect. Because I know that recently in China, every school have some AI related courses, and but not everyone has been aware of the data or the AI system bias, the issue. So I think that's quite important. If people want to know that, so they can, if any people in from China would like to invite you or your organization to help them in, so they can contact you and have presentation in their school, right?
Yeah, of course. You can email
Perfect.
us in the email that's on the website as well. It's just greentechnologyinstitute.org.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Um, Maybe Nearby could unmute himself for this slight discussion for the 5 minutes. So, right.
As I was hearing, I was only here for the last few minutes of this conversation because I'm the co-host for the next session. But as I was hearing, we were talking about the issue of data bias and safety with and risks within AI, right? And one of the main things is that in my previous projects, it is mainly focused towards medicine. And with AI coming into medicine, it is highly important that these AI systems aren't outputting uh, data that is not plausible in real life situations, right? Uh, and one of the big things with this is that most of these AI models today are multi-layer neural networks. They only rely on data, and there are in the medical field, in critical areas such as the medical field, there are only data sets available from the thousands to the millions, not in not in 100 millions, 10 millions, billions. These can be found in language, but not in specified areas which have higher liability rates, such as medicine. And that's where data you can't rely simply on data. You have to rely on something more than that. Including something including true medical patterns that are actually going to be safe and credible for the use of the users.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's very important. One of the things that we try to understand is, especially for critical fields like you mentioned, medicine, we want safeguards, and we want to understand that from like professionals' point of view, where it's you have to draw a baseline on where AI should be applied and where human review and auditing should be mandatory. So those recommendations are definitely what we're looking at as well. Thank you for that insight.
Yeah. So, do you think that like if it was only based off of medical text, do you think an AI would like be really good at like figuring out diagnostics and like being good in the medical field? That's like a question. Like it doesn't have any outside biases from like different types of things. So,
Yeah, I think that's very difficult because for artificial intelligence to diagnose you, it would need a lot of information about your body that it doesn't have the capacity to look at right now. And I'm no expert on this, so I'm just basing on the articles that we've looked into. But as far as the capacity goes right now, artificial intelligence is best used as a tool, as like for visual screening, for data analysis rather than as the single thing that should diagnose you. And I think those recommendations are probably also going to persist because if AI starts diagnosing you with no human review, the cost for that could be substantial.
yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that panel discussion we had for the past 5, 10 minutes. Thank you, Jihyun, for staying for this extra 15 minutes.